Y'all see Caitlyn? Y'all see Caitlyn? Caitlyn looked pissed. Watch her face. Watch her face. Watch her. Grabbing on her pants. Do it look like her back hurt? Just chat. Do it look like Caitlyn back hurt right now? Do it look like Caitlyn back hurt? Just chat. Real quick.
Watch her face. Watch her body language. That's not the look of someone nursing a back injury. That's frustration. That's anger. And according to some fans who were courtside at this Indiana Fever game, that's what happens when a coach makes a decision that could destroy everything this franchise has built. Because the question isn't whether Caitlin Clark left the game early, the question is why. And depending on the answer, this could be the most catastrophic coaching decision in WNBA history.
Welcome to the Benzino Podcast, where we're calling a spade a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. No. There's no way, right? This can't be true. I'm seeing some speculation out there. Did Stephanie White bench Caitlin Clark? Stephanie White got mad at Caitlin Clark after a turnover and told her to sit down, told her to go hit the showers. There's no way, right? There's no way.
The speculation started almost immediately after the game. Social media exploded with one question: did Stephanie White actually bench Caitlin Clark? Not because of an injury, not because of foul trouble, but because she was mad. Because Caitlin turned the ball over. Because in that moment, the coach let her emotions override basic business sense. And if that's true, if Stephanie White pulled the player responsible for selling out arenas across the country because of one mistake in one play, then we need to talk about what that means for this franchise. Here's the context you need. Caitlin Clark isn't just another player on the Indiana Fever roster. She's the reason the WNBA saw a 48% increase in attendance this past season. She's the reason the Fever went from playing in front of 4,000 fans to selling out 17,000 seat arenas. She's the reason little girls are buying number 22 jerseys and begging their parents for tickets. The economic impact is measurable and it's massive.
So we have that. And then we have another angle. A longer video. You got the coaches huddled up. Caitlin Clark on the bench at this point. Still on the bench. She's stretching out her back, it looks like.
Now look at this angle. This is footage from John the Liquidator, a content creator who was sitting courtside. And this angle changes everything. Watch what happens in the huddle. Caitlin's on the bench, clearly stretching her back. That could support the injury narrative. But then watch this interaction. Brian January, the assistant coach, is sitting next to Caitlin. They appear to be talking. Then Brian gets up and walks over to Stephanie White. They have a brief conversation. And then Stephanie White walks directly to the huddle, tells Caitlin to get up, and puts Raven Johnson in her place. That sequence matters, because if Caitlin told Brian her back was hurting and she couldn't go, you'd expect to see a trainer. You'd expect to see someone from the medical staff checking her out. You'd expect to see some kind of injury protocol. Instead, what we see is a coach making a substitution, and Caitlin Clark walking to the locker room looking absolutely dejected. Not in pain, not limping, just frustrated and angry.
Now this angle is a little bit more convincing, actually. Now what's this right here? Is this Brianne January? I wonder if Caitlin's telling Brianne January here, my back hurts, I can't go. And then Brianne January gets up and lets Stephanie White know, hey, Cece's back hurts. I don't think she could go. And that's when Stephanie White gets in and takes Caitlin Clark out and puts Raven Johnson in. Yeah, that angle at least raises my alarm bells. Man, I wish John would have caught that video a little bit earlier so I could see what they're talking about in the huddle.
Let's analyze this frame by frame because the details matter here. Brian January goes to the huddle first. She's talking to Stephanie White. Now, is she saying Caitlyn's back is tight? She says she can't go. That's possible. Or is she relaying something else entirely? We don't have audio, so we're reading body language and sequence of events. What we do know is that Stephanie White then makes a decisive move. She walks over, gestures for Caitlyn to stand up, sits Raven Johnson down, and makes the substitution. But here's what's bothering people. If this was a legitimate injury concern, why wasn't it handled differently? Professional sports teams have protocols for this. The player tells the coach she's hurt. The coach signals for a trainer. The trainer evaluates the player on the bench or takes her to the locker room for assessment. Then a decision is made about whether she can return. That's standard procedure across every professional league. But that's not what this footage shows. This shows a coaching decision, not a medical decision.
Stephanie White. And then in comes Stephanie White, telling CC to get up, telling Raven Johnson to sit down. What do you guys think? This angle makes me actually think. This, I really wish John would have gotten this about a minute earlier. This angle, I can at least see the Brianne January, Caitlin Clark interaction, Stephanie White coming in saying, hey, you get up, you sit down. Was this precautionary? Was it the injury? Or was it precautionary? They took her out because they didn't want her back to get her because they saw that Alyssa Thomas was beating her up and playing rugby out there and playing tackle football. Or was Stephanie White angry at something Caitlin Clark did and took her out the game?
And this is where the conspiracy theories started gaining traction, because Caitlin Clark has been dealing with aggressive physical play all season. Alyssa Thomas, who the Fever were playing against in this game, has a reputation for physical defense that sometimes crosses the line into what looks like tackle football. Multiple fans and analysts have pointed out that Clark gets hammered on drives to the basket with no calls. She gets grabbed, held, pushed, and the officials let it go. So when people see her stretching her back and then leaving the game, the immediate assumption is that the physical play finally took its toll. But then you watch the footage and something doesn't add up. She's not moving like someone who just injured her back. She's moving like someone who's been told to sit down and isn't happy about it. There's a difference between pain and frustration, and what we're seeing in this video looks a lot more like the latter. Her facial expression isn't grimacing. It's disgust. She's not holding her back or moving gingerly. She's walking normally but with visible anger in her body language. Now, could this still be precautionary? Absolutely. Maybe Stephanie White saw that Caitlyn's back was tight and made the decision to pull her before it became a serious injury. Maybe she was protecting her franchise player from further damage in a game that was already getting out of hand physically. That would actually be smart coaching. But if that's what happened, why does Caitlyn look so angry about it?
If by some chance Stephanie White decided to bench Caitlin Clark yesterday because she was emotional and got mad that Caitlin Clark didn't listen to her on one fucking play, she turned the ball over. Oh, she turned the ball over. If that's true, nobody should spend a single dollar on this organization ever again. Tickets, jerseys, t-shirts, cups, mugs, necklaces, foam fingers, bracelets, whatever the hell they sell at the team store, socks, slippers, flip-flops, headbands, whatever they sell, visors, whatever they sell at the team store, basketballs. Never spend a dollar on this organization again. Go to Wilson and get yourself a Wilson basketball. Go to Nike and get yourself a Caitlin Clark merchandise or apparel. But if she got benched, there shouldn't be a single dime spent on this damn organization ever again. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video, hype the video, and subscribe to the channel.
Let's talk about what's really at stake here. The Indiana Fever sold more than 800,000 tickets this season. That's an increase of more than 400% compared to the previous year. Merchandise sales went through the roof. The team's social media following exploded. National television broadcasts featuring Caitlin Clark drew audiences that rivaled NBA playoff games. This isn't speculation. These are documented facts from the WNBA's own reporting. And all of that economic success is directly tied to one player, not the entire roster, not the coaching staff, not the organization's marketing department. Caitlin Clark is the draw. She's the reason casual sports fans who've never watched a WNBA game in their lives suddenly started tuning in. She's the reason ESPN moved Fever games to primetime slots. She's the reason little girls are showing up to arenas 3 hours early just to watch her warm up. So when a coach makes a decision to remove that player from a game, it better be for a damn good reason. If it's a legitimate injury, fine. Nobody wants to see a player get hurt worse because a coach left them in too long. But if this was an emotional reaction, if Stephanie White got frustrated with a turnover and benched the most valuable player in the entire league, then that's not just bad coaching. That's organizational malpractice. Think about the message that sends. You're a fan who spent $200 on a ticket, another $50 on parking, another $100 on food and drinks, and you brought your daughter to see Caitlin Clark play. And then in the third quarter, the coach pulls her and she doesn't come back. Not because she fouled out, not because she's obviously injured, but because the coach was mad about one play. How do you feel as a paying customer? Do you buy tickets to the next game? Do you trust that you're going to see the player you paid to watch?
Wow. Seems not a day goes by where conspiracy doesn't shadow this team, doesn't hover over this team. Let's get right into it, shall we? Like the video, hype the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below and subscribe to the channel. Jason Willock, he posts John the Liquidator's video.
This is the part that should terrify the Indiana Fever front office. Because fan trust is fragile, especially in women's sports where every franchise is still fighting for sustainable attendance and revenue. The WNBA has spent decades trying to build a loyal fan base. This season, largely because of Caitlin Clark, they finally broke through to mainstream attention. Casual fans started watching. Media coverage exploded. Sponsors started paying attention. This was the breakthrough moment the league has been waiting for. And now there's a very real possibility that the coach of the team with the league's biggest star just alienated a huge portion of that fan base. Because the fans who show up to see Caitlin Clark aren't necessarily traditional WNBA fans. They're Caitlin Clark fans. They followed her from Iowa. They watched her break college basketball records. They want to see her succeed at the professional level. And if they start to believe that her own coach is working against her, they're not going to keep buying tickets.
There is no way any fan should ever spend money on this team again. I'll say it one more time. If by some chance Caitlin Clark was benched, if you think Caitlin Clark was benched, there is no way any fan should spend any money on this team ever again.
Look at the reaction online. Thousands of fans saying they'll never spend another dollar on Fever merchandise. Threats to boycott games, demands for Stephanie White to be fired. Now social media overreacts to everything, so you have to take some of that with a grain of salt. But the underlying sentiment is real. These fans feel betrayed. They feel like the organization doesn't appreciate what they have. They feel like the coach is letting ego get in the way of winning and entertainment. And here's the thing, they might be right. Because even if this was a legitimate injury situation, the optics are terrible. The lack of communication is terrible. The fact that the team hasn't released a clear statement explaining exactly what happened is terrible. In the absence of official information, fans fill the void with speculation and conspiracy theories. And once those narratives take hold, they're incredibly difficult to counter. The Fever needed to get ahead of this immediately. A simple statement: Caitlin Clark experienced lower back tightness in the third quarter. Our medical staff evaluated her and determined it was best to hold her out for the remainder of the game as a precautionary measure. She's day-to-day and will provide updates on her status. That's it. That's all they needed to say. Instead, we got silence, and silence breeds suspicion. So let's examine both possibilities here because we need to be fair to everyone involved. Scenario 1. Caitlin Clark's back was legitimately bothering her. She told Brianne January. Brianne relayed that information to Stephanie White. Stephanie made the responsible decision to pull her from the game before a minor issue became a major injury. Caitlin was frustrated because she's a competitor who wants to play every minute, but the decision was medically sound. If that's what happened, this is much ado about nothing. The team just needs to communicate better. Scenario 2. Caitlin made a mistake on the court. Maybe she didn't run the play Stephanie White called. Maybe she turned the ball over in a crucial moment. Stephanie, who's known for being a demanding coach with high standards, got frustrated and made an emotional decision to bench her star player. Caitlyn knew it wasn't about injury. She knew she was being punished. That's why she looked so angry. That's why she walked off without talking to trainers. If this scenario is true, it's one of the worst coaching decisions in recent WNBA history. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Maybe Caitlyn's back was a little tight, not enough to force her out, but enough to give Stephanie White a reason to pull her after getting frustrated with her play. Maybe it was 10% injury concern and 90% coaching message. Maybe Stephanie wanted to send a signal that nobody is above being held accountable, not even the franchise player. If that's the case, it's still a questionable decision given the business realities, but it's at least understandable from a coaching perspective. But here's what we know for certain. The way this was handled created a public relations disaster for the Indiana Fever. Whether the decision was right or wrong, the lack of transparency has damaged the relationship between the organization and its fan base. And in a league that's still fighting for every dollar of revenue, every ticket sold, every jersey purchased, that damage has real consequences. Think about the position this puts Caitlyn Clark in. She can't publicly criticize her coach without creating a massive controversy and being labeled a diva. She can't demand a trade without being called selfish and ungrateful. She can't even express frustration without it being blown up into a major story. So she has to smile, say the right things in interviews, and hope that behind closed doors, the organization understands the delicate balance they're trying to maintain. And think about the position this puts Stephanie White in. She's a respected coach with a championship pedigree. She was brought in specifically to take this team to the next level, but she also has to manage the reality that her most important player is also the most scrutinized athlete in the entire league. Every decision she makes regarding Caitlyn Clark will be analyzed, criticized, and second-guessed by millions of fans and media members. That's an incredibly difficult coaching environment. The Indiana Fever organization has to be asking themselves some hard questions right now. How do we rebuild trust with our fan base? How do we ensure this doesn't happen again? How do we balance competitive coaching decisions with business realities? How do we protect our investment in Caitlyn Clark while also maintaining a healthy team culture where everyone is held to the same standards? Because here's the uncomfortable truth, Caitlyn Clark is bigger than the Indiana Fever. Her brand, her following, her economic impact transcends this one franchise. If the relationship between Clark and the organization deteriorates to the point where she wants out, she'll have options. Not immediately because of how WNBA contracts work, but eventually. And if that day comes, the Fever will go right back to being a struggling franchise playing in front of half-empty arenas. The WNBA should be paying attention to this too, because the league's recent success is fragile. It's built largely on the backs of a few transcendent stars, with Caitlyn Clark chief among them. If those stars start to feel unsupported by their organizations, if they start to believe that coaches and front offices don't appreciate what they bring to the table, that's a problem for the entire league. Player empowerment is growing in women's basketball just like it did in the NBA, and the WNBA doesn't have the financial cushion to survive stars forcing their way to bigger markets. So what happens next? The Fever need to release a clear, detailed statement about what happened in that game. They need to address the injury question directly. They need to show their fan base that they understand the concerns and take them seriously. Stephanie White needs to demonstrate through her actions that she values Caitlyn Clark and understands her importance to the franchise. And Caitlyn needs to stay professional, keep her head down, and let her play do the talking. But the bigger question is whether the damage can be undone. Because once fans start to believe that an organization doesn't respect its star player, that narrative is incredibly hard to reverse. Every future substitution will be questioned, every coaching decision will be scrutinized, every perceived slight will be magnified. The Fever may have just created a situation where no matter what they do, a significant portion of their fan base will assume the worst. And that brings us back to the fundamental question, was this worth it? Even if Stephanie White was trying to send a message about accountability, even if she was trying to establish that everyone on the roster has to follow the same rules, was benching Caitlyn Clark in that moment worth the fallout? Was it worth the conspiracy theories, the fan backlash, the damaged trust, and the national media attention? Because you can be right about the principle and still make the wrong decision in practice. The answer, from a pure business perspective, is almost certainly no. The Indiana Fever exists to win games and make money. Caitlyn Clark helps them do both. Anything that jeopardizes her health, her happiness, or her relationship with the organization is a threat to those core objectives. So even if the coaching decision was defensible in a vacuum, the way it was handled and the consequences that followed make it a failure. So here's what I want you to think about. If you were in Stephanie White's position, knowing everything we know about Caitlin Clark's value to the franchise, would you have made the same decision? If Caitlin's back was genuinely bothering her, of course you pull her. But if this was about sending a message, about establishing authority, about holding everyone to the same standard regardless of star power, would you do it? Would you risk alienating your fan base and creating a national controversy to make a point? Or would you find another way to address the issue? Let me know in the comments, because this is the kind of decision that defines a coach's relationship with their team and their city. And right now, a lot of Fever fans are questioning whether Stephanie White made the right call.